What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Huddle. Hope you're having a great Friday today. And on the show, we're going to be talking World Series. We got Game 1 going a bit later on tonight. Of course, we're going to be looking ahead to NFL Week 8. We're going to take a look at what happened last night in Thursday Night Football between the Bucs and the Bills. I've got a new edition of 2-Minute Trivia. I got to bring in my co-host here, Tony Farmer, at Tony's Market Tips. Tony, I hope you're having a great Friday, but I got to put you on the spot here. Viewers of the program will know that we're both 49ers fans. And considering we're off back-to-back losses and Brock Purdy's in concussion protocol, do we have to start worrying now about the season? Like, what's going on here?
Andrew, I'm not hitting the panic button yet, but what I mentioned in last week's show, the 49ers kicking situation, Jake Moody needs to start hitting some kicks, and I will feel a lot better. We do have some injury concerns. Obviously, Brock Purdy, is he going to play this week? That's a huge concern, but it looks like just a 1-week injury with the whole concussion protocol thing. So if they lose this week, I do think it's time to start hitting the panic button because they want that number 1 seed in the NFC. They want home field advantage in the playoffs.
I can't believe where we're at after the first few weeks, and everybody's talking about the Niners, and we look unstoppable and this and this and that. And now here we are. We've lost to, you tweeted about it, we lost to the Browns without Deshaun and Nick Chubb. We lost to the Vikes without Justin Jefferson, and here we are. Like, it's getting a bit wild here. I, of course, was off last week. You and Mitch did a bang-up job carrying the program. I got to ask you a question. Have you ever bet on a sport or something that you knew nothing about?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been many years, but when I first started betting, I knew nothing about tennis. And honestly, I don't know a lot about tennis these days. But when I first started betting, I knew nothing. And I would just put these parlays together of like tennis players that I'd heard of that were big favorites. A lot of books, most books won't even let you parlay these things together anymore. But I would take like Serena Williams and Venus Williams and these big name, minus 300 favorites, parlay them together and cross my fingers. So don't try this at home, kids. We do not recommend this. But yeah, I've dabbled in that a bit.
Yeah, I'm at home with my family last weekend, and I'm watching the Rugby World Cup with my nephew who plays rugby and loves to watch it. So I'm sitting there, and it's before the semifinal. It's New Zealand and Argentina in the semi, and I'm looking up, like, the spread is like New Zealand's favored by 19.5 points, and Argentina had some big wins to get there. So I just blindly threw some money on Argentina plus 19.5. The first half looking good. Second half, of course, the All Blacks come out and blow them out of the water. But I'm sitting there watching the game, and it was great. Like, if we've got anybody that watches rugby in the audience, like, great sport, super fun to watch. 80 minutes goes by quick, no commercials. I'm sitting there asking my nephew, like, these ridiculous questions just nonstop. And I know, like, he's accommodating and he's answering and he's helping, but, like, nonstop. Like, why are they throwing this out on the sideline? Why did that guy kick it? Like, what's the point system here? Pretty crazy. A little bit reckless of me to throw some money there on Argentina. But yeah, must have been driving my nephew crazy with my questions.
First of all, a lot of people are saying there is a rugby team in Philadelphia in the NFL, with the way the tush push is happening, or the brotherly shove, as some people are calling it. You're talking about right now reminds me a little bit of when I watch football games with significant others. So I tell anybody that I date, like, absolutely no on Sundays. But if there's like a Monday night football game or a Thursday night football game where I've got no action on or a little bit of action, I'm kind of watching more as a fan, I'll allow people to watch with me. And it's hilarious. Like, sometimes I have to write them down because I'm like, there's no way I just got asked this question. One recently, I was watching a game, and just randomly, we're watching the game. There's a referee making a call, and the person that I'm watching the game with looks over at me. She goes, "So what's the deal with the refs?" And I'm just like, what do you mean, what's the deal with the refs? Trying to be patient, trying to be a teacher in this moment. And I think the follow-up question was like, so how much money do they make, or something like that? And it's questions that I don't know the answer to, which as a know-it-all kind of drives me nuts, right? Like, I want to be a teacher. I want to share this information, but it's stuff that I actually don't know the answer to with football. And the questions are so good that they're bad questions, if that makes sense. Another one that I got, there was an instant replay going on, and, the motions are slowed down on the instant replay. And I got, wow, their legs look really jiggly. Like, they do, but I don't want to be like talking about these players' jiggly legs when I'm focusing in on the replay. So I wonder if your nephew felt a little bit like I feel when I'm watching football games with people that don't understand the sport quite as well.
100%. I guarantee it. And those are some great examples because my girlfriend, I can't say girlfriend. I'm in my 40s here. That sounds so weird. My partner will do the same thing. Like I'll watch Tottenham, or we'll be watching Monday Night Football or baseball, and she'll be asking those same kind of questions. But that brings me to another thing here. Earlier this week, I don't know if you saw this, but this was making the rounds on social media. Somebody had put together I'm air quoting definitive, a definitive list, and I'll make sure Steve puts this up on the video version of the Huddle, a definitive list of places women absolutely refuse to go on a first date. So I'm going to run through this list, and I want your feedback here. Some of these are a bit surprising to me, but bear with me here. So Cheesecake Factory, Applebee's, Chili's, Chipotle, Olive Garden, the movies, your house, valid, any fast food chain, of course, Buffalo Wild Wings, Wingstop, Red Lobster, a buffet, so any buffet apparently out of bounds, IHOP, Denny's, the gym. I don't go to the gym, so no worries there. Church, Starbucks, or coffee dates, very weird to me. Ice cream dates, very weird. Family functions, of course, that would be hellish for a first date. Movie night, so Netflix or Hulu, etc. Somewhere that requires a long drive. Bowling, nightclubs, hookah bar, a bar just for drinks, Waffle House, or sporting events. That basically leaves like nothing except like a high-end meal. What are your thoughts on that list? Like there's some ones there like coffee. I thought that was standard first date material. Like you go, you have a coffee, you chit chat, whatever. Ice cream, bowling would be super fun. What are your thoughts on that list?
Listen, I want to know the person who made this list, where do they live, right? Because where I am now in Austin, lots of restaurant options. So yeah, me suggesting like, Cheesecake Factory or Applebee's or something like that on a first date, it's gonna be like, what the heck? But I've also lived in places like when I lived in Minnesota, there weren't many options. I was in Moorhead, Minnesota. I was right on the Fargo, North Dakota border. And so there were just pretty much just chains. So if you give that list to someone up in Fargo, North Dakota, or in Moorhead, Minnesota, that list, boy, they're going to have their work cut out for them. There's not going to be many options. So I think geographic has something to do with it. I like a good coffee date, man. I like a good coffee date. Let's just focus on conversation. Not like interviewee, like I'm on one side of the table and you're on one side of the table and let's just ask each other questions back and forth. But something casual, like a coffee date, I'm all for personally.
Yeah, it definitely has the vibe that whoever compiled that list, definitely a big city like New York, LA, Chicago, Houston kind of vibe. But yeah, man, we need those smaller, intimate settings, depending on your location, of course. Let's get into Thursday Night Football here, Tony. Another primetime under. I believe that makes it 17-7 for the under, just a tick under 71%. So I got to ask you, it's the beginning of week 8. 71% success rate on unders in the primetime games. Is this a case of the public or casual bettor just always betting or slightly maybe inflating the line in those standalone games that odds makers are going to hang out there? Or is there genuinely something a little bit more to this trend?
Very, very profitable for unders this year. Over 60% on the year. I believe it's the most profitable under year since 2005, I saw somewhere. And so this is definitely a trend to keep an eye on. I look at it almost like a pie chart, Andrew. Like the theory that you just threw out there is definitely a contributing factor, but it's not the whole factor. Yes, the public pushes totals up and inflates numbers, but that's always happened. That's always a thing. What we have this year, and we talked about it a little bit on last week's show, is I think the way that these defenses are playing in the NFL, where they're kind of like more bend but don't break, more defensive backs on the field, I think that is a contributing factor as well. But keep an eye. This is going to reverse. I promise you, at some point in the NFL this year, this is going to reverse. We saw this in baseball. Remember when the baseball season started? It was overs that were hitting because of all these rule changes. We had the pitch clock, we had stolen bases. That reversed. March Madness last year, if you remember back then, we had a very similar thing with the totals and it reversed. These odds makers are making adjustments and there will be a reversal. I promise you. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but I promise you there will be a reversal at some point. So keep an eye on this trend.
For you, was this a convincing bounce back Bills win for you? I mean, we were very close to a Baker Mayfield Hail Mary for the Bucs winning this game. It looked like they were potentially a bit complacent sitting on that 14-point lead. Any takeaways for you from the Bills' perspective? I mean, otherwise they look great. Josh Allen doing his thing, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Anything in that for you from the Bills' perspective?
I got to say, Andrew, I'm actually more concerned about the Bills after this game than I was going
Okay.
into it. I would have loved them come back, blow Tampa Bay out by 3 touchdowns, because we all know that they're capable of that, right? But if you follow the Buffalo media, it's been, why isn't Josh Allen running more? Why isn't Josh Allen running more? Well, we saw him run a little more in this game. We also saw him go into the blue tent with a mild, apparently, shoulder issue. So, one, it sounds like there's a little bit of a maybe previous injury there. Maybe that's why he hasn't been running so much. But two, this team is just not putting people away. They've got a great roster on offense. I think those defensive injuries are starting to pile up.
Yeah.
And you see a team like the Bucs who cannot run the ball they didn't have tremendous success running the ball last night, but I saw several runs that Buffalo shouldn't have given up last night and did. So I've got some concerns about Buffalo. Coming into this game, they lost 2 outs. So if that Hail Mary gets caught last night, and if the Giants have a little more luck at the end zone, 2 small things, we could be looking at a Bills team that was 0-4 the last 4 weeks. So I do still have more concerns about the Bills going forward.
So it was a good night for prop bettors that were on over. Josh Allen, first TD plus 950. We had Josh Allen over 22.5 rushing yards hit, over 259.5 passing yards, over 1.5 passing TDs. We had Chris Godwin anytime TD. Dalton Kincaid, I believe the first tight end touchdown against the Bucs. Gabe Davis anytime TD. Mike Evans. You see the list here on screen. Did you have anything in prop markets last night?
Yeah, it was a really good night for me. I kind of cleaned up on Gabe Davis's over. I took his alt receiving yard over. That was the prediction machine free pick of the day, over 60 yards, and that hit at plus 220. But I also hit the plus 70, the plus 80. I had a plus 90 bet and a plus 100-yard bet. That one was 7-1. Those didn't hit. And by the way, these are all like under a unit bets. These aren't like full unit bets, just for people out there to be aware of. But what I liked about Gabe Davis in this one is the Bucs secondary situation. So Jamel Dean had given up 20 catches on 26 targets this year. QB rating, quarterbacks against him was like 118 or something like that. And it was clear that Gabe Davis was going to be matched up with Dean, because you knew that the Bucs' top cornerback, Carlton Davis, was going to be matched up, of course, with Stephon Diggs. So you look at that matchup and you're like, all right, Gabe Davis, who already has 2 games over 90-plus yards this year, he's kind of a boom or bust guy. I really like the alt receiving yard total going into it for sure. But bad beat for people that took Buffalo to cover, because that last drive where Tampa Bay came in the back door in order to cover, I believe they converted on a 4th down. There was that weird face mask on Baker Mayfield, which it was a fine call. They should have thrown the flag, but it was inconsequential to the play. The guy didn't need to grab the face mask. So Buffalo bettors, I think, kind of took a bad beat there, and Tampa Bay bettors got a little lucky on the side.
Speaking of luck, if anybody out there had these World Series exacta odds that you had sent to me earlier in the week. So October 2nd, which wasn't that long ago, Arizona to defeat Texas plus 41,500. Texas to defeat Arizona plus 35,000. Absolutely crazy. Of course, we got game 1 of the World Series going tonight. Of course, it is the Texas Rangers against the D-backs. I mean, I feel slightly robbed that we didn't get the Phillies, who were playing so well up until the end there. Futures odds are Rangers minus 184. We got D-backs at plus 152. Game 1 lines, I've got a game 1 pick at the bottom of the show, so stick around for that. But D-backs plus 143 with Zach Gallen on the bump. Go Rangers minus 174. Nate Eovaldi on the bump. Are the Diamondbacks now the team of destiny? They've got a ton of doubters and a ton of haters. Mad Dog Russo, of course, being the most prominent one. But is this a team of destiny now, or are you all about the Texas Rangers here?
I'm not betting this one because the Diamondbacks have burned me. I keep looking at my numbers and I'm like, Diamondbacks should lose this game based on the data. And then they prove me wrong. So I'm not going to fall for that trap again. I'm going to look for some live betting opportunities in these World Series games, but I don't have a bet on game one. Are they a team of destiny? Interesting question, because remember, they barely snuck in these playoffs. Remember we had the game with the Chicago outfielder let the ball drop. And depending on how the NL race had wrapped up in the regular season, there's an alternate universe where the Diamondbacks aren't even in the playoffs whatsoever. So fascinating from that perspective that a team that barely snuck in may be the World Series champions at the end of it. I can't wait, man. This is kind of a World Series where I'm excited just to watch as a fan, because I think either city has a great storyline here. It should be fun.
Yep, for sure. And some elite players when you think of Corbin Carroll as a young prospect coming up, probably ahead of schedule for his development. Ketel Marte, insane postseason so far. Some good players to watch, some great pitching potential matchups. MVP board looking like this. Corey Seager plus 450, Garcia plus 500, Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll there 10-1. You taking a long shot from the MVP board here?
Yeah, I really like Leody Taveras at 70-1. Shop around, because I saw him at 60-1 at some other shops, but you can find him out there at 70-1 at some prominent books out there. What I like about this guy, three things. One, he can get streaky, and I think that's what you're looking for when you're looking for a long shot World Series MVP. Someone that is kind of boomer busty, right? And so this guy hit 368 in May, and you might be thinking, well, Tony, May was a long time ago. I know. But my point is, he can get hot and streaky and stay hot for a 7-game series, because we've seen it from him earlier in the playoffs. He's got a little bit of pop, just enough pop where it wouldn't be a shock if he hit 2, maybe 3 home runs in the series. And he can steal some bases as well. We saw him rob a home run in the ALCS, so he can flash some leather as well. So I could see him stringing together some games and being a good long shot option. So I've got just a little tiny pizza money sprinkle on Leody Taveras in this one.
Yeah, I love that. That dude, like he's got an all-around game, and we know in the World Series there's always those guys like a bit further down the board that come up and get that clutch hit, get a couple of game-winning RBIs in the series. So yeah, good shout there. Like Zach Gallen, maybe 17-1. Like I know he had a rough series against the Phillies, but if the D-backs are going to win this thing, with this guy going game one, they're going to need a couple of elite starts from their ace, who was incredible in the regular season. So 17-1, a little bit of value there on a guy that has struggled in his last couple starts, but don't expect him to keep that up. I like him to bounce back here in the World Series and tonight in game one. Wanted to put this out there, a K-pop group, Tony. I know you're a huge K-pop guy. They wanted to show their support for the Texas Rangers while they were on tour. But instead of wearing Texas Rangers jerseys, they actually showed up on stage wearing Glasgow Rangers jerseys. Did your light just fall there?
It did, man. We got a little wind situation going on here. So yeah, my light fell, almost took me out. And I mean, I've got cat-like reflexes, so it really wasn't a problem at all.
Incredible hands. Still got the hands. Little Leody Taveras shout out there. But yeah, this group got on stage wearing Glasgow Rangers jerseys instead of Texas Rangers jerseys there. Glasgow Rangers, of course, being the second, or I guess first, depending on who you talk to, the most popular team in Scottish football. World Series trivia time, Tony.
Oh, boy.
Are you ready for this?
No, I'm not ready. I'm never ready, but let's go. Let's go.
So this is about World Series, specifically when the Diamondbacks or the Rangers were in it. I'm going to set my timer here.
Ooh, okay.
Are you ready?
Nope, but let's go.
The clock begins now. What year did the Diamondbacks win their only World Series?
Early 2000s, 2001? Yep.
Correct. The D-backs beat the Yankees in 7 games. Who were the 2 starting pitchers in Game 7?
Oh, gosh. Schilling, I believe, for Arizona. And who would have been starting for the Yankees back then? They've had so many good teams, it's all a blur. El Duque?
Not a
Hernandez?
bad guess. It was Roger Clemens. It was Curt Schilling, so you get a half point for Curt Schilling. This set the record, the Diamondbacks World Series win, set the record for the earliest a Major League Baseball franchise had won a World Series into its existence. How many years did the Diamondbacks exist?
Oh, man. I could be way off on this. Like 6?
You're close. It's 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Who got the World Series clinching, game-winning, bases-loaded hit for the D-backs in Game 7?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, man. I got no idea.
Luis Gonzalez.
Oh.
That RBI single was the second World Series to end on an RBI single in a 5-year span. The other was 1997 Florida Marlins. Which player was on the bases for both of those walk-offs?
Ooh, Marlins and Diamondbacks? Oh, my gosh. It's going to be a hitter on the Marlins and Diamondbacks. I got to pass. I have no idea.
Craig Counsell. You got time for one more. What year did the Rangers play in their first World Series?
Rangers in their first World Series. Wait, was it that recent one? Wait. Yeah, 2011? No?
So close. 2010.
Ah, man. Off by
Very, very close. That's not, I mean, to be fair, that was very, very difficult. You got a point and a half. You know what I remember about that 2001 World Series? It was my favorite. It's probably my favorite moment. It's when George W. Bush walks out shortly after 9/11, and he throws that ceremonial first pitch with apparently a bulletproof vest on and fires an absolute strike from the rubber.
Give him the MVP.
One of the absolute all-time moments.
Absolutely. It was, I think baseball was a little different back then, man. It had a little more juice to it. Don't get me wrong, I'm loving these playoffs and it's fun, but being a Red Sox fan, I was rooting hard against the Yankees in that series, and it was so nice to see. But you mentioned Roger Clemens. Thanks for reminding me that he was in that series. You had Schilling. You had Randy Johnson. I mean, incredible pitching matchups. What a great World Series. But I'm so mad that I couldn't remember who got that Game 7 hit, because these people who have these hits in the World Series, they become heroes. And certainly anybody in Arizona can answer that question. But it wasn't that long ago, and I'm down on myself that I didn't get that one. But in my defense, I have to worry about lights falling on me as I'm answering these questions. So it's a lot of extra pressure over here.
Yeah, you're right. Those are tough, though, man. And on the spot, Luis Gonzalez is a tough pull. Let's look ahead to the NFL here, the Week 8 board. Some big road faves this week, Tony. Philly, minus 6.5 at Washington. The Ravens at Arizona. Chiefs at Denver. Road faves, great straight up this season, 27-16. Not so great against the spread, 21-20-2. And also another note here, a lot of low totals on the board. Falcons at Titans, 35.5. Jets, Giants, 37. Browns and Seahawks, 38. Those are just the ones under 40. We have 17 instances, Tony, of games with a sub-40 total so far this season. Nothing in terms of over-under, with the under holding the slight edge at 9-8. But underdogs against the spread in this spot, 12-4-1 against the spread in games with a sub-40 total. Anything to comment on that? Is that just a complete outlier, or is there something with that?
Yeah, these unders this season are just wild. I would say keep an eye on teasers. I usually don't like teasing totals. It's something that I stay away from. But when you've got unders creeping down to like 37 or so, how about a 10-point teaser, a 3-team 10-point teaser, where now you just got to go over 27. You just need 4 touchdowns in order for that to hit. So those totals creeping down like that, it's something to keep an eye on and something to consider. Again, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here, because in the past I've said, teasing totals is a bad idea, but the betting landscape is shifting right now, and we need to kind of shift with that. This week, in terms of weather, I think the Dolphins-Patriots game is going to be the only game where I think there's going to be decent amount of wind. They're saying like 15 mile per hour sustained winds, 20 miles per hour gusting winds. So keep an eye on that one as well. I don't recommend betting under on it now based on the wind, but this is definitely one where Sunday morning you're going to want to, see what the beat writers are saying about the wind conditions.
I've got to get your opinion on this whole Bijan Robinson thing, though. The failure to disclose his injury status last week after he got just 11 snaps, 1 carry, 3 yards against the Bucks. Arthur Smith says he hasn't even been thinking about it in the wake of that. But of course, this has ramifications for fantasy owners and us sports bettors, and they are obligated to disclose this information per league policy. Do you think there should be punishment here for the Falcons in this whole thing? And if there isn't, what do we bettors do to compromise this information?
Yeah, there has to be punishment because we need to deter other coaches from doing this. The worst part about this whole thing, you mentioned fantasy owners. How about people that had player props on him? The worst part was that he got 1 carry. He got 4 snaps and 1 carry. So most books will have a little caveat where if your guy doesn't play, then the bet is going to push and you'll at least get your money back. So this was a worst case scenario. It actually would have been slightly better for some bettors out there if he didn't play at all and got 0 carries. So yeah, there should be a fine. It's frustrating. And it's not the first time this year that we've seen misinformation from this time a head coach, but also media sources. Tom Pelissero, who's a great reporter, by the way. I don't want to bash him. He rarely makes mistakes. But earlier this year, he said Emmanuel Mosley was going to be playing cornerback for the Lions, was going to be playing in week 4. And later he had to tweet and say, my bad, miscommunication. I'm going to have to eat this one. Whoops. So people are making wagers with real money based off of this information that we're getting from supposedly trusted experts. And it's frustrating when head coaches, in the example that you cited, or when media reporters just get it flat out wrong. What can you do to combat this? I think just smaller bet sizes is a big thing that you can do, because if you're like, oh, I have a lot of conviction in this game, I really like it, I'm going to bet 8 units when I usually bet 1 unit. Something like this can sink you.
So then, one thing I want to talk about here is looking at the home team. And forever 3 points was attributed to most home teams by odds makers. That was the sort of value given to that, quote, home field advantage. I know there were outliers like the Legion of Boom Seahawks maybe, and the Green Bay Packers sort of maybe another point or half point or whatever. But here in 2023, in the sports betting landscape, Tony, is that even a thing anymore? What do you make of home field advantage, and how should bettors, casual, pro, or otherwise, be treating the, quote, home field advantage?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Andrew, because this is like one of my big sports betting pet peeves, because it's a myth. And it used to be true. It no longer is. But I'll still see on like credible sports betting websites and social media accounts this just repeated and regurgitated. This whole, well, the home team gets 3 points. So, if, for instance, this week, the Jets say they're favored over the Giants by 3 points. Well, if this team is at home, otherwise on an equal field, they'd be equal. Therefore, I'm going to bet this team. Stop. Just stop with that. So when I'm handicapping games, and I've heard other handicappers talk about this, so this isn't just a Tony thing. When we're handicapping games, each stadium has a separate value for home field advantage. And guess what? Some stadiums, it's 0. The Chargers and Rams, I give 0 points for home field advantage. There may be more away fans in that stadium than home fans. And the way teams are traveling these days, they're comfortable in their luxury jets. They're sleeping in nice beds. The whole travel angle, especially if it's not a long travel, isn't impacting them as much as it used to. So the standard 3-point thing is dead. It's under 3 points now, and it depends on where the team is playing.
That's such a good point about a team like the Chargers, like where, it's sort of relocated and there's a lot of traveling fans going there to see their team play at that stadium. Do you think the same can be said about the Raiders now being in Vegas?
Yeah, it's not quite as dramatic, but yes, absolutely. Because, there's a lot of people who live in Vegas who are already fans of established NFL teams. And so there's not that rabid environment. At least in Vegas, you might have people betting on the home team, casual fans that are going to go to the game, place a wager and they'll be really into it. So yeah, when I'm watching Vegas games, it is the case, but not as dramatic as I see with the two teams in LA.
Let's get into some picks here. And I know you've got your NFL heavy. I got a pick for some baseball. I got a little bit of soccer. But kick us off here. What do you got for NFL this weekend?
I like the Cowboys to cover against the Rams. I bet this one at 5.5 earlier this week. It's up to 6. I would still bet it at 6. I think this could be one of those games where the Cowboys just blow the Rams out. We've seen Stafford under pressure, and it doesn't look pretty. The Rams have additional injuries this week in practice that are going to shake up that offensive line even more. And on the other side, we got the Cowboys. We got Mike Parsons, great pass rush. I think the Rams could look really bad this week. And I think what we're seeing is the Rams are falling down to earth from that team that we all thought they were earlier in the season. And so we have our priors. The Rams are going to be, maybe a 500 team, maybe a little better. They start out hot. People get really excited. I think they're coming back down to earth a little bit.
I'm going to do a little 3-leg, I know this is crazy, 3-leg anytime TD Parlay. I'm going to have a little fun here with my first pick. So I'm going to go Tyreek Hill minus 125, Jahmyr Gibbs minus 121, Rashee Rice plus 220. This comes out to around plus 950 for a 3-legger. So first of all, how is Tyreek only minus 125? He scored a TD in every game except one. He's scored in 3 straight. He's already scored against the Pats, and the Pats are bound for a letdown this weekend. As far as Gibbs, this is just because the Raiders can't really stop anyone anymore. Gibbs is coming off a really strong game against Baltimore, even though the Lions as a team, of course, were not good. And Rashee Rice, Denver can't stop anyone. Rashee Rice is finding his groove. Saw a tweet from Jacob Gibbs breaking down his numbers versus zone defense, which the Broncos play a lot of. So there you have it, a 3-leg anytime TD parlay for week 8. What do you got next?
Andrew, I don't know if you've bet that one yet or if you're planning on betting it, but I'll just throw this out to people that are doing teas or parlays like this. I'm not a big parlay guy, so I'm biased in this. And if people want to bet parlays, it's totally fine. Do what you want to do. Instead of taking that wager maybe as like a 1-unit wager and betting on that, maybe divide it down and do like a half unit and take the other half unit and bet those 3 guys individually. Because if it cashes, sure, you're going to be winning a little less, but it kind of creates a little bit of a safety net for you. So it's just something to consider for people that like those 3 options, as I do as well, that you picked out there. Number 2 for me, Colts plus 1.5 against the Saints. I'm fading Dennis Allen. I think he's the worst coach in the NFL. I really do. And while we've seen some questionable decisions from Shane Steichen on the other side for the Colts, I do think there is a mismatch here for the Colts over the Saints. A lot of people were surprised by Gardner Minshew last week because he had a really bad performance the week before that against the Jaguars. The Jaguars run a zone defense, and this week, Minshew, like he did last week against the Browns, is going to be seeing more man-to-man coverage. So I think he is equipped to kind of, cut through that kind of a defense. So give me Gardner Minshew and the Colts this week, plus 1.5. I also like that teased up 6 points if you got a dance partner on a teaser.
Game 1 of the World Series, of course, tonight, D-backs at the Rangers. I'm going to go Zach Gallen over 4.5 strikeouts here at minus 105. So he hit the over at 25 of 34 starts in 2023, over that 4.5 number, and 3rd in the National League in strikeouts. The guy is a stud. Pitched against Texas twice during the regular season, 6 Ks in 5 innings on May 2nd, 11 Ks in 6 innings on August 22nd. D-backs 1-1 in those games, but eclipsed that number in both his starts against the Rangers. And is he due for a quality start? He's just not been at his elite level in the postseason so far. He's not topped this number in any of his 4 starts in the playoffs. So very much like what Krusty the Clown said about the Generals, I think Gallen is due. Give me over 4.5 Ks for the D-backs ace there.
I like it. My next one here might surprise you a little bit because I've said a lot of positive things about the Texans this year, and I am still a bit bullish on the Texans. I think that they could surprise some people this year, but I don't like this spot for them. They're coming off a bye. The Panthers are coming off of a bye, and I like the Panthers plus 3.5 here. Definitely get the hook, get that half point because there are still some 3s in the market. When this one came out, it was plus 3. I kind of liked it, but I said, you know what? I'm going to wait this out and hope that the market works in my favor and I can get 3.5, and that's exactly what happened. So I've hit it at 3.5. By the way, this is another good tip. When lines come out early in the week, If you like the favorite, bet it earlier in the week. And if you like the dog, wait, because the public can tend to bet it up. So I like the Panthers here. They've got a new offensive coordinator. I think that could put a little more spice into their offense. They've got good weapons. Guys are coming back. Miles Sanders should be healthy for this one. In the secondary, Xavier Woods should come back. And Zavala, their guard, who's been injured for a couple weeks, should be back as well. So they're getting healthy at the right time. Wouldn't be shocked to see a Panthers win outright here on Sunday, but I really like the plus 3.5.
Wow, how dare you against our beloved Houston Texans. My last pick here, Premier League, the early Saturday kickoff. So apologies to folks on the West Coast. Chelsea versus Brentford. I'm going to go both teams to score here, minus 122. Chelsea starting to figure it out under Pochettino. 2 wins and a draw in their last 3 Premier League games. 2 goals at Fulham, 4 at Burnley, 2 at home to Arsenal. Brentford sort of underperforming the expected goals metric here. 17.54 expected goals, but just 14 goals scored. So we've got 2 of the most underperforming squads in the league when it comes to XG. And then speaking of the Arsenal game, what a terrible advertisement for goalkeeping in the league in that Arsenal game. Sanchez looked really, really bad. I don't know how comfortable he is between the sticks for Chelsea just yet. So there you go. 3 picks from me, 3 picks from Tony to get you sorted for the weekend. I know we're running a bit long here, but a couple other topics I want to touch on before we sign off here. Have you seen this Jay-Z thing that was trending earlier in the week, Tony?
No, fill me in.
Okay. So there was a question put out there. Would you rather have $500,000 cash or lunch with Jay-Z? Now, obviously, I assume, but obviously you take the $500K, right?
Absolutely. No doubt.
So is there anybody on this planet alive that you would take the lunch over the $500,000?
No, because I feel like if I had $500,000 to burn, I feel like I could like pay one of those celebrities like $400,000 to meet with me, take the $100,000, throw it on a good bet, something like that. No lunch is worth that kind of money to me, but if someone was going to come somewhat close to tempting me, I would love to sit down with Jerry Rice, man. He was always like my favorite football player growing up. And what I respect about him is that work ethic. He was not the fastest, the tallest, but he just worked his butt off and he became one of the best football players of all time, definitely the best wide receiver of all time. I'd love to have lunch with that guy and pick his brain and see like where that motivation comes from, why he's such a hard worker, get advice from him. I'd love to talk to Jerry Rice.
That's a great shout, to be honest. And as a fellow Niners fan, obviously a legend. I think I'd maybe pick somebody that could answer a bunch of questions for me. So like someone high up in the CIA or something that knows a lot of secrets. And I'd sign the NDA. Something about like, give me some alien info. Like what is there something more to like alien sightings and stuff that's sort of surfaced in the past year? Or like somebody that can answer some of those JFK conspiracy theory questions as well, I think would be a good lunch date. I don't know who that is, but somebody high up in the CIA, I think maybe one of the few that I would take over the $500K.
I wish I had thought of that. That answer is way better than mine, man. That's a good one. I like it.
No, man, Jerry Rice is a great response, man. Absolutely, Jerry Rice is a great response. Let us know in the comments, who would you take over the $500,000? But to be perfectly honest, 99.999 infinity would be the money. Are you much of a movie guy, Tony?
A little bit here and there. Not so much like recent movies, but a little bit.
So there's a new Scorsese movie out there based on an incredible book, actually, called Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, let me preface this by saying I'm a huge Martin Scorsese guy. I love his movies. I think he's made some of the best American movies of all time. That said, I was not a fan of The Irishman. But this new one, Tony, 206 minutes. That's almost, I think it's what is that? Like 3.5 hour runtime. So my question to you, nowadays in 2023, when there's so many things competing for our attention, is that how long is too long for a movie? Because that's not one I'm going to go to the theaters for, I don't think.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in a movie theater for 3.5 hours for anything. I'll tell you what, though, I saw the trailer for this film and it looks good. So for me to answer your question, like, is that too long? It depends on the content, right? Like, you and I will sit and watch an overtime football game for 3.5 hours and think nothing of it because we're entertained. So if you can bring it like there is with a cast in this one with Scorsese, when I saw the trailer, it reminded me a bit of Dances with Wolves. It had the love story narrative going on. It had obviously the Native American theme based loosely on like historical events. And so that was another really long film that I enjoyed. And again, I only saw the 2-minute trailer. Maybe that comparison with Dances with Wolves isn't fair, but that's just kind of the vibes that I got. And if it's anything like that film, which I really loved, one of my favorites of all time, yeah, I would sit down for 3.5 hours. But again, I think you're right about not being in the theater for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say like some of the great movies of all time have extended run times. Like think Godfather 1 and 2, The Deer Hunter, Barry Lyndon. A ton of movies reach that sort of 3.5, 4 hour runtime. So Scorsese plus 200 to win the Best Director Oscar. This one is plus 300 to win Best Picture. DiCaprio plus 275 to win Best Actor. Lily Gladstone plus 150 to win Best Actress. But all of these are sort of behind Oppenheimer and candidates from that film, which was another one that has a bit of a heavy-duty runtime. Have you ever bet the Oscars?
I've never bet the Oscars. What I find fascinating about it, though, is that someone knows the answer. Like someone's writing that down on the card. And so you always wonder about leaks, right? Like it reminds me a little bit of these, Super Bowl props, like what color is the Gatorade? Like there's a human being that's filling those buckets and they know what color the Gatorade is. And so you wonder about leaks. And so I haven't bet these markets, but what I've heard is keep an eye on the steam because if you see all of a sudden, the odds go from minus 200 to minus 400, it may be because information has gotten out there and leaked.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice. Maybe we should do a live stream on the Oscars. Like we can do a bunch of bets. We can get dressed up in tuxes, live stream the huddle from the Oscars. Something to think about. We'll workshop it, but in any event, we've ran a bit long here. So thank you all so much for watching on YouTube or listening. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And hit us up in the comments section with your favorite bet from the weekend ahead. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and on Instagram and on TikTok. And I'll leave you with this quote to stress the significance of bankroll management, something that Tony alluded to earlier. Eat your betting money, but don't bet your eating money. I'll leave you with that one. Thank you for watching The Huddle, and we'll see you next week.